Before we get started, I just want to give a quick thank you shout out to my patrons in the Mutt tier. We've got Wilma, Glad Goku, Dare Denny, Kale Bennett, That Jordo, Kenkei of Warheads, SP can't come to the phone right now, please leave a message after the beep, beep, Cyrus the Skeptic, Biotin, and I've bought the entire helium supply. Have fun blowing up balloons now. Thank you. Hey, what's up? I'm Channel Pup, the mascot for the Level-Headed Fanboy, and today we are talking about just a single piece of artwork and the sheer goldmine of information that this one image gives us. Yes, we are talking about the Marvel Studios Fantastic Four artwork and casting reveal from Valentine's Day. Now, I realize I am pretty late to the punch with this one, I apologize. I had a very busy Valentine's Day with all these chicks on Twitter telling me their naughty pics are in their bios, and then out of nowhere my bank account got totally drained, so if you want to make me feel better, if you haven't already, please subscribe for more Marvel videos. You won't be disappointed, and it would mean a lot to me. And as always, this video is made possible through the support of my patrons. To find out how you can become a patron, and the rewards for doing so, the Patreon link is in the description below. As well as that, for one-off support, there is the Ko-Fi link too. Any and all support is hugely appreciated, and it keeps the lights on. Thanks. Alright, so casting. Let's start off with Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, and I know what you're thinking, this isn't really news. But it's not something I've talked about yet either. So we'll cover all four of Marvel's first family here. So Pedro Pascal is Reed Richards, and I recognize that this casting decision has been somewhat divisive, despite Pedro Pascal being a pretty beloved actor at the moment. And I think that, as silly as it sounds, that is precisely the reason why the announcement of his casting was met with such mixed responses. I think with his reputation comes the assumption that because Pedro Pascal is hot right now, that's the sole reason why he was cast for this project, and I can see that. I can absolutely recognize the validity in that. At the same time, my personal opinion is that I can also absolutely see him as Reed Richards. It's admittedly quite a safe choice, and there's nothing really wrong with that. I think after two cinematic incarnations of the Fantastic Four never quite made it off the ground, one of which being an especially radical departure from the more traditional Fantastic Four archetype, Marvel Studios going for fairly conventional picks for these guys is, well, I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of. We want to see the Fantastic Four at the end of the day, you know? So I appreciate that they're going this route as opposed to something really out there. At the same time, you know what? No, there was a safer bet. John Krasinski. John Krasinski would have been such a safe bet, given that A, he was the most commonly fan-cast actor for Reed, and B, he's already played Reed in the MCU. I never assumed that they'd recast him for the Prime Universe variant. I'm not calling it 616. And while I thought John Krasinski was fine in the role, I have quite a bit more enthusiasm for Pedro Pascal as Reed. Heck, I don't even recall him ever playing some sort of genius scientist type, so I don't think you can really argue that this is an instance of typecasting either. I can absolutely see this choice though. Being real, I don't think there's ever going to be an actor more perfect for the role of Reed Richards than Ewan Griffith. But I think Pedro Pascal is going to bring some real sauce to the table, so I am really looking forward to him as Reed. Okay, so the next to be revealed was Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, who will be played by Joseph Quinn, who, truth be told, I haven't actually seen any of his performances yet. I never got past Season 4 of Game of Thrones or Season 3 of Stranger Things, which I understand are the performances he's probably most known for. That being said, I did take a look at the All About video for him on IMDb, and I mean, for starters, he already looks the part. I can absolutely see Johnny Storm here. Heck, even if I didn't, he's gonna be on fire for like a huge chunk of the film anyway, so not that it really matters what he looks like. But from what I've seen, he plays very much a fun, sort of big brotherly character in Stranger Things, which I think will absolutely fit for Johnny Storm. He's got that sort of youthful energy that I'd love to see playing off of The Thing. Okay, so the next two were revealed on Valentine's Day, so let's start off with Sue Storm, aka Invisible Woman, portrayed by Vanessa Kirby. Now, I did see some rumors and speculation around that Vanessa Kirby was related to Jack Kirby, which would have been sweet, but unfortunately, no, my friends, the Easter Bunny doesn't exist, and Vanessa Kirby is not related to Jack Kirby. She is in fact related to Nintendo's Kirby. Now again, I haven't actually seen much of Vanessa Kirby before. Once again, I checked out some of her videos on IMDb. Now, given that she is a British actor, I do wonder if she'll be doing an American accent or if Sue Storm will be portrayed as British this time. I mean, hey, nationality isn't exactly an integral component to any of the Fantastic Four. That being said, again, she certainly looks the part. I can absolutely see her as Sue Storm. I like that they didn't go for someone overly young, like in their 20s. At the same time, there is a fair age gap between her and Pedro Pascal, but it's not by any means like inappropriate or weird. So yeah, I think she's a great choice. They can finally stop asking Emily Blunt about this now. And then finally there is Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, as portrayed by Ibon Moss-Bachrach. And interestingly enough, he has already appeared in an MCU project before, that being The Punisher. So we've got a rare instance of, what's like the casting equivalent to inbreeding? In-casting? Now, I can easily see him as Ben Grimm. I mean, I'd say he looks the part, which he does for Ben prior to becoming The Thing, but he's likely to spend the majority of the film covered in, well, I'd say makeup, but given that this is the MCU after all, I'd probably say CGI, and not that I'm complaining. As much as I like practical effects, I was never really convinced that the Tim Story version of The Thing was actually made of rocks. All I really saw there was foam. But okay, for Ibon Moss-Bachrach, I think he'll do a good job at the more abrasive side to The Thing, and I'm really hoping that he'll have great chemistry with Joseph Quinn. So overall, I'd say a really, really solid cast. I have no reason to doubt any of these casting choices. I guess you could say they're quite safe choices. It almost feels like I've already seen these performances in my imagination. But again, nothing really wrong with that. We don't always need to do some very bold, unique take, and even if the casting choices are relatively archetypical Fantastic Four choices, we'll see when we start talking about the artwork that there are still a lot of very out-there decisions being made here. So, the artwork. It's absolutely worth noting that this artwork could just be artwork. There's no saying that this is definitely what the film is going to be like, but I hope it is because I'm absolutely loving everything I'm seeing here so far. So given that this artwork dropped on Valentine's Day, we've got the Happy Valentine's Day banner. And okay, first things first, as a piece of artwork, this is gorgeously illustrated. This artist has really captured that sort of 1960s nuclear family vibe with this. You've got the complementary, very pastel colors with the pinks and the blues of the house. They've captured the actor likenesses really well, especially The Thing. He really looks like Ibon Moss-Bachrach. I mean, he does, because, well, yeah, he's in his rock form over here. Over on the wall, there's a portrait of Ben Grimm in his astronaut garb, which tells me that this Fantastic Four will be more traditional astronauts rather than interdimensional travelers. I do wonder if this version will be an origin story, or if they'll do the Spider-Man Homecoming thing, where it's like, okay, we've already had 2 origin stories now, let's just jump straight into their adventures. On one hand, it would be cool to jump straight in. On the other, I don't think the Fantastic Four's origins are quite as, shall we say, storied as Spidey's. Like, even people who have not actually consumed any Spidey media know how Spider-Man became Spider-Man. I think it's Spider-Man and Batman where you don't really need to retell those stories. Anyone else? Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. I think they could easily gloss over it in like a prologue or something. But okay, back to the artwork. If this is anything to go by, this iteration of the Fantastic Four will take place in the 1960s, which not only is that exciting, as this would be a very out-there period piece for the MCU and a nice change of pace for the contemporary tentpole blockbuster, it would also make a ton of sense. For one, the Fantastic Four really fit those 1960s sensibilities, family values, etc. Even down to the name, which feels quintessentially 60s. It's hard to really refer to the Fantastic Four by name in a contemporary setting without it eliciting a little laughter or mockery. We are very cynical now, apparently. I mean, Doctor Strange made the joke about them charting in the 80s in The Multiverse of Madness, and the gritty 2015 film straight up never actually said the name, only alluding to it at the very end. And Lord knows I am flinching at the prospect of yet another ha-ha comic character named Funny joke in the MCU. It's not bloody funny anymore. It doesn't even make any sense now. Everyone's got a funny name in the MCU. Why are they laughing about this all the time? Oh god, please, please, please do not have them make fun of the name Doctor Doom. I think a 1960s depiction of the Fantastic Four can easily be handled with the sincerity that it really deserves. Not only that, but all of their scientific ventures are going to be that much more impressive to a 1960s world. But then this would also answer the question of, where were the Fantastic Four during the Infinity Saga? Well, there's your answer. Dead. Or retired. Now, this would potentially squash Fantastic Four crossover opportunities, and I know that to some, part of what makes the Fantastic Four being brought into the MCU such an exciting prospect is being able to see them as a part of larger MCU story events. I know that there's a lot of folks that would like to see Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four together. After all, they had a great relationship in the comics, arguably the closest of any of Spidey's superhero alliances. But let me put it this way. I think the MCU's interconnected nature has become a little tiresome post-Phase 3, as the overarching multiverse story just gets bigger and more unfocused. I think especially now, the MCU needs an occasional breather from all that. A perfectly standalone movie focused on its own characters without worrying about the ramifications of the greater universe. This is an opportunity for Marvel Studios to just make a film for the sake of making a film. And yeah, it is kind of a missed opportunity to not have them meet Spider-Man, sure, but I also want to point out, MCU Spider-Man has had plenty of stories revolving around him teaming up with different Avengers. He's had a sense of familial kinship with Iron Man already, and now part of what makes his journey ahead so exciting is his sense of isolation from all that. So I think the Fantastic Four are better off without massive ties to the greater MCU. But I also think the same goes for Spider-Man now. I mean, okay, seeing Spidey with these guys after another film or two could be cool given that his relationship with the Avengers and Iron Man still had a little awkward distance in there. They weren't treated as people he could truly rely on. Maybe that could be the difference for Spidey and just what he needs after a story or two of being more isolated. I think it's important that we do accept, though, that there are some things that just aren't going to happen when adapting these properties, and that's okay. You do what is right for the story at hand. At the same time, I can't rule it out, because on one hand, you can have time travel. The MCU has already explored concepts far wilder than time travel, as well as just, well, time travel in of itself in Avengers Endgame. Reed Richards is a genius scientist, so there's nothing to say these guys couldn't travel to the future to help out in a crisis. Maybe they end up lampooned there. Although I hope they will wait a couple of movies before leaving them there permanently. At least give us like 2 films of the Fantastic Four in the 60s, or maybe they'll return to their own time eventually. Then there's also the fact that we've actually already seen a Reed Richards crossover with the greater MCU, and team up with other heroes, because huzzah, multiverse, our answer to everything. We've had John Krasinski. Maybe they'll go a little further and have a multiverse Fantastic Four to cross over with the MCU, but that is very eat your cake and have it. More evidence that the multiverse ultimately cheapens these characters and renders things with less meaning. So kinda hoping they won't do that. So back to the artwork though. There is a huge surprise here. If you look to the far left, offering the Thing a hot cup of joe, is Herbie the Robot, and the timing, for me anyway, couldn't be better. So just recently I made a video on the 1980s Spider-Man cartoons, which meant I needed to do a little research on the DePatie-Freeling Marvel Universe, and one of the shows in that universe was the new Fantastic Four. And a key departure from the traditional Fantastic Four lineup was the absence of the Human Torch due to the rights to the character being tangled up with an existing TV pilot in development at the time. Replacing him was Herbie the Robot, who was made specifically for the show by Jack Kirby, John Byrne, Stan Lee, and Marv Wolfman. It's insane how influential the DePatie-Freeling Marvel Universe was, from Spider-Man and his amazing friends character Firestar going on to become a member of the X-Men in the comics, to Herbie the Robot going on to appear in the comics, and now going as far as to making it into a live-action movie. But hang on. Given that he took the 4th spot in the new Fantastic Four back in the 80s, would that not make this the Fantastic Five? We also have a look at what the costumes could look like, most notably on Reed and Sue, and once again, we're really going against the grain of the contemporary blockbuster here. The Tim Story versions of the Fantastic Four sported dark metallic blue and black costumes. Then we had black and grey, very militaristic outfits for the Josh Trank versions. And now on the complete opposite end, for the MCU, we've got these sky blue and white jumpsuits. So again, being set in the 60s, with the costumes being man-made rather than cosmic, like say Captain Marvel, these costumes will naturally have a different aesthetic to the rest of the MCU, which is a really, really, really good thing. I generally do enjoy costumes in MCU projects, and they're usually pretty reliable for at least being recognizable to their comic counterparts, and this is no exception. A common criticism, though, is that they're over-designed for, like, most MCU costumes. They got too many lines on them, and they look like they're bought from the same tailor. And I'll say this, there are some MCU costumes that I would absolutely consider to be over-designed. But there's a lot of instances of comic book movie Twitter thinking they're all artists and not understanding that often, for the sake of making these costumes look tangible and convincing, they need to look layered or functional. And often the way to achieve this is through line work that complements the form or appears functional, that and seams. Parts where the material changes, as it would. That being said, there are some costumes that do strike me as over-designed in the MCU. One example being Ant-Man's suit in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Just a lot of visual noise going on here, and I can't really identify what function much of it serves. But perhaps one of the best examples of costume over-design was the first Reed Richards suit in the MCU in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Yeah, it was instantly recognizable as a blue and black jumpsuit, but there was also this patchwork of panels and lines all over it that didn't appear to really serve any purpose at all. Made worse by the fact that elements like the black collar were broken up and segmented for no reason. It was just a very busy design for the sake of it. The Fantastic Four costumes do thrive on their simplicity, I feel, and I'm pleased to see that these new designs here are much more in line with what I'd like to see. At first glance, I thought these were knitted. However, on closer inspection, the line work on these costumes do appear to be circuitry. Now, remember what I said, line work and paneling needs to be purposeful. Well, that looks to be the case here. As for one, these costumes do need to be functional at the end of the day. It needs to be believable that Sue's costume could disappear with her and that Reed's costume could stretch with him. I'm hoping these circuitry details will be quite subtle in the film though, as this could easily make the suits look overly busy if executed wrong. One thing that looks very promising to me though is that they have moved away from Hollywood's weird phobia of boots and belts looking like boots and belts on superhero costumes. No, this isn't a load of white panel vomit going down the calves, these are actual boots. Good. I'm also noticing that Sue's suit has the white collar while Reed's doesn't, so I'm guessing that they'll all have slight variations of these costumes, possibly to suit their powers. I'm really liking how these suits are looking on paper though, and I hope this will be executed nicely on live action. I'm also hoping that these suits will be a bit more fabric-y as opposed to that leathery rubber that so many MCU costumes are nowadays, because I do agree that a lot of MCU costumes look like they're all bought from the same tailor. Variety is the spice of life, and I'm really hoping they'll recognize that in this film. Then there's the logos on the chest, which also extends to the film's logo too. I love how rounded the corners of this number 4 are, very sort of 60s looking. And the white lining that kind of breaks up the 4 is very tasteful actually. It layers things nicely, and it almost reminds me a little of the Sega logo, but that could also just boil down to hedgehog brain rot. I'm also noticing that the Marvel Studios logo has been given the 60s treatment too, which makes me wonder if that opening fanfare is going to be any different, and please let it be, because I'm kind of tired of the one we already have. This could all be really, really refreshing. Everything here is looking really promising, both as an adaptation of the Fantastic Four, and just as a very refreshing new comic book movie. I'm really hoping that this artwork here is indicative of what the final film is going to be. But what do you guys think? How do you feel about the casting and everything this poster communicates with us about what we can expect from this film? Comment below, discuss, and as always, if you enjoyed this video and you want to support more like it, be sure to hit subscribe, hit the like button, and in the description below is the link to my Patreon page, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name in the credits of these videos and a special shout out goes to the patrons in the $5 and above tiers. Firstly though, I would like to welcome the new patron, Game Bastard Queep. Thank you for joining the Pup Posse. And then we've got Wilma, Calix, Richard Rogers, Glad Goku, Dare Denny, SSS06, Kale Bennett, That Jordo, Kenkei of Warheads, Dazzle Fizzle. SP can't come to the phone right now. Please leave a message after the beep. Beep. Cyrus the Skeptic, Biotin, I bought the entire helium supply. Have fun blowing up balloons now. And Vera Wild. Thank you all so much for your generosity, and to those of you at home, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Now get out of here.